Hey everyone, and welcome back to Malaysia in Focus, your deep dive into the political, economic, and cultural stories that really matter in Malaysia today. Because behind the loud, tense headlines of our recent state elections lies a hidden, historical formula that forces our politics into a rigid racial divide. And today, we're exposing exactly how it works. We'll be using some brilliant insights from political scientist Dr. Wong to figure out how we might finally break free from it.
So grab a virtual cup of kopi. We're going to use this roadmap to quickly connect the dots between our constant political gridlock and the pragmatic cures to actually fix it, moving from the immediate post-election reality all the way to a brand new electoral solution.
All right, part one, the post-election reality. If you followed the recent state elections in places like Negeri Sembilan and Malacca, you know the exact tension I'm talking about. We are seeing a massive consolidation of Malay voters swinging towards PN and BN, what everyone is calling the green and blue wave, and on the flip side, the red wave, with non-Malay voters anchoring themselves fiercely to PH and DAP. It's like two impenetrable walls facing off against each other.
To really put that into perspective, in many specific areas during these elections, over 70% of the Chinese vote went exclusively to DAP. 70%. That is a staggering number. It highlights this massive polarization that leaves any kind of moderate, middle ground politics just totally gasping for air. I mean, it's hard to build a bridge when everyone is standing at the absolute extreme edges, right? So why do we actually vote like this?
Well, to understand that, let's move to part two, Malaysia's M-shaped society.
Dr. Wong diagnoses this polarization using a really specific visual analogy. Think of a normal society like a bell curve or an upside-down V, right? The vast majority of citizens sit comfortably right there in the moderate middle. But in Malaysia, we are shaped like the letter M. We've got two massive, totally separate peaks with a deep, hollowed-out valley in between them. This structural reality means that if any political party tries to boldly stand in that middle valley, they just fall completely flat, because literally nobody is standing down there to support them.
If this M-shape analogy is giving you a bit of a light bulb moment about how our country actually operates beneath the surface, do me a quick favor. Hit that like button and subscribe. It's the absolute best way to stay updated on Malaysia's biggest stories, and make sure you're always part of an informed community. Don't miss out.
Now let's look at who is actually standing on these peaks. On peak 1, you have Malay nationalism. They inherently want state intervention to protect the community, and they fiercely guard Malay and Muslim identity. To this peak, sliding into the middle feels like allowing too much freedom. It feels dangerous. Then on peak 2, you have pro-multiculturalism. This side generally prefers a free market and minimal government interference in cultural life. For them, moving into that middle valley feels like too much compromise, like they're giving up their basic fairness. We are essentially two entirely different societies sharing one map, and we're completely terrified of the space between us.
So the multi-million ringgit question is, how did we end up with these two completely separate peaks in the first place? That brings us to part 3, our colonial historical roots. We weren't just born this way. This was by design. It's a fascinating butterfly effect. Back in 1857, the British faced the massive Sepoy Mutiny in India, an uprising largely sparked by ignoring local religious sensitivities. The British learned a really hard lesson. So when they started setting up indirect rule in Malaya in the late 1800s, they thought, okay, let's not make that mistake again. They took over the economy but deliberately left the local sultans with authority over exactly two things, Islam and Malay customs. Fast forward to our independence in 1957, and this purely administrative colonial decision had unintentionally cemented a permanent idea into our constitution. To be Malay is exclusively to be Muslim. Our modern political identity was literally forged by colonial pragmatism.
And that historical separation birthed the economic policies we still argue about today. Let's move to part 4, the Bumiputra fast lane.
Dr. Wong uses a fantastic analogy to explain Bumiputra affirmative action. He says the system is like holding a lottery ticket and having access to an airport priority lane. Look, very few people actually win the mega jackpot, but absolutely everyone wants to keep their ticket just for the small, everyday perks. You can't just walk up to someone and tell them to throw away their lottery ticket or step out of the VIP lane by giving them a lecture on political ideology. It just doesn't work that way.
When we try to debate these policies purely on ideology, people just get defensive. Think about your everyday food delivery rider. They aren't getting the lottery ticket, those massive government mega contracts reserved for the elites. But they do rely on the priority lane, things like slightly cheaper housing or university access.
It's their safety net. If we want to bridge our M-shaped society, we have to stop preaching and start focusing on pragmatic integration. Here's a perfect example. Right now, 20% of students in Chinese vernacular schools, SJKC, are actually non-Chinese. Malay parents aren't sending their kids there to make a political statement. They're doing it because the education and Mandarin language skills give their kids a real tangible edge in the job market. That is how real integration happens, through shared practical benefits. This deeply ingrained pragmatism brings us right back to today's political tightrope in Part 5, the unity government dilemma.
With these two peaks constantly clashing, you might be thinking, if there is so much compromise and frustration right now between PH and BN, why don't frustrated parties, like DAP, for instance, just pack up, leave the cabinet, and move comfortably back to the opposition? Why stay in a tense marriage?
Well, it comes down to the Westminster parliamentary system we inherited. Step 1, we operate on collective responsibility, meaning all cabinet ministers have to publicly support the government's decisions no matter what. You have to speak as one voice. Step 2, if a major party gets fed up and pulls its ministers out, it sends a massive shockwave, and allied parties like UMNO might feel pressure to follow suit. Step 3, suddenly the prime minister loses massive numbers overnight. And step 4, the whole government ultimately collapses like a house of cards, triggering immediate snap elections. And right now, nobody wants to roll the dice on a snap election where they could lose everything. So they stay together, totally trapped in this incredibly delicate balancing act.
So if we can't easily break the government, and our society is fundamentally stuck in this M shape, what's the cure? Let's hit our final section, Part 6, a new electoral solution.
The real answer might lie in how we actually count our votes. Under our current system, first past the post, everyone is forced into a racial binary because a candidate has to capture a massive majority in a single geographic area just to win one seat. It forces parties to merge into these huge, clumsy coalitions that constantly lean toward racial populism just to survive. But if we switch to proportional representation, or a partyless system, it rewards a party based on their total percentage of votes across an entire state. This means smaller, highly focused, issue-based parties can actually win seats without needing a massive racial majority in one specific neighborhood.
Let me show you exactly how game-changing this is. Let's say a small, independent party fighting for environmental rights gets 9% of the total vote across Selangor. Under our old first-past-the-post system, because they didn't get 51% in any single district, they get absolutely 0 seats. Poof, their voters' voices just vanish. But under proportional representation, that 9% total vote share could actually translate to 1 or 2 solid seats in the state assembly. This brilliantly opens up what experts call a second dimension in our politics. Right now, our only dimension is race and religion, that M shape. But proportional representation breaks that binary. Suddenly, we could actually have real legislative debates about class, about the environment, labor rights, and the everyday economic struggles of gig workers or single mothers. Smaller, idea-driven parties like PSM or MUDA could actually survive the political slaughterhouse. They could get into the assembly and hold these massive coalition governments accountable without causing the whole government to collapse.
Thanks so much for watching. If you want to join thousands of Malaysians who demand clarity over confusion, be sure to tap like, hit subscribe, and let's keep making sense of this incredibly complex country together.
I'll leave you with this final thought. If we know that a structural cure to our toxic polarization actually exists, and that it could give a real voice to everyday issues instead of constant racial rhetoric, are we finally ready to demand a system that forces our politicians to compete on ideas rather than identity? Think about it. See you next time.